All right, so our next topic is presentation of the strategic plan, and I'll turn this over to Adolfo Bailan, our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Just wanted to start by thanking Council for initiating this process last year, and also to our communications department for their work on really pulling together a lot of information in general. And I will have more thanks later in the document, but I think it's fair to point out that this process commenced midsummer last year, and it is not a process that takes 2 to 3 months. It really is a prolonged process due to a lot of involvement from a lot of different people, including Council. Emily and LaHood, our communications manager, and I are here tonight to present the draft of the city's 5-year strategic plan. I'd like to acknowledge efforts of staff and community to develop the plan. Like I mentioned earlier, we started this process well before last summer, but the actual meeting and engagement process with our consultants on this project commenced in the summer of last year. Early contributions and direction from Council was crucial in leading us to this point. Considerable effort was made by department directors and managers throughout the entire phase of this process. And reaching this point is only the next step in what will become an ongoing process as we roll out the strategic plan into the multiple departments. A little more detail. The purpose of this plan is to help both the City Council and staff identify areas where we need to focus our efforts for the next 5 years through 2028. The plan spans multiple elections and budget cycles and will set the tone for budgeting priorities and staff work and planning. The committee, staff, and City Council will use the plan as a guide and measure of accountability. So it is something that we will look at regularly. It is something that will help us as we move forward, and it is something that is, again, a collaborative effort, not just by staff, but also staff and the council body.
Thank you. So if you go to the next slide, please. City manager already talked a little bit about the timeline, but just as a reminder, how we arrived at the document that we're presenting to you tonight. Last summer, the City Council met with the city leadership team in 5 special meetings facilitated by Creative Strategy Solutions. That was Una and Kim. From those discussions, you created a shared 5-year vision, you identified obstacles to achieving that vision, and you adopted 4 strategic directions. Since those strategic directions were adopted, staff have been meeting internally to develop goals and an implementation plan, which we'll be presenting to you tonight. Once you, the council, adopt this plan in whatever final form it takes, we'll develop a final document. We'll create an online dashboard so the community and yourselves can view that, and then we'll be working with our city leadership and staff to develop ongoing work plans related to this. We'll also be providing regular updates to the council. Next slide, please. Actually, I think now we're going to switch to the actual document, please. So while this gets up on your screen, we're going to walk through the plan. We're not going to read everything out loud to you, but we are going to give you a high-level overview. You'll see on this first page the shared vision that the council adopted last year. That's what we hope to see as a result of our efforts. We identified some obstacles to that vision. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll be able to see that. And then we identified, sorry, it's very hard for me to see. We identified some high-level goals and strategies as well. Just a couple of things to note. This is not our entire work plan for the next 5 years. These are what we want to achieve, some areas to focus on, but we're still going to maintain the roads. We're still going to, make sure that the customer service desk is staffed. So just because you don't see it in this plan doesn't mean we're not working on it. Before we get started, also, you're going to see some symbols in this plan. If you see a check mark, that means that the strategy is currently funded via a partnership. The X means that while we believe it's an important strategy, it's not currently funded or staffed. If you don't see a symbol, that means that the strategy can be achieved with our current funding or staffing levels. And so next, we're going to move to the next one, which is if you go to the achieving financial stability, city manager will go over these. Sorry, keep going. There you go.
Thanks, Emily. And just continuing with the 4 directions, strategic directions that council had helped us to identify earlier. First is achieving financial stability. Over the next 5 years, our goals are to define current and future financial outlooks and budget needs by defining our long-term budget needs and evaluating and presenting both councilmatic and voter-approved revenue options, while also determining service levels cuts that will be required if voter-approved ballot initiatives fail. And that's just some of the information that we've been sharing with council over the last several weeks and months. Item 2 is the plan also asks that we implement councilmanic and voter-approved revenue options, which will include a ballot measure. The next point, advancing racial equity. Over the next 5 years, our goals are to understand current programs, hiring, and practices through an equity lens by developing an equity impact tool and auditing our current programs and practices. We also will be working with a consultant who is currently under contract to develop internal frameworks and tools. We'll continue to support and advance efforts through the Advancing Racial Equity Staff Committee, which we met with today. The committee has been meeting regularly for the last several months, and we hope to just continue engagement as we move forward. And lastly, and we will establish and implement a training program for the City of Burien organization. This could include staff training, training for council, or other stakeholders. Hand it back over to Emily.
Thank you. If you could slide down to centering, yeah, thank you, community accountability. So we have 3 goals under this strategic direction. The first is in the next 5 years, we hope to improve customer service experience in prioritized areas. So this will include a new online permit system, a new community service request system, as well as internal customer service workflow. So this is that issue reporting. We want to enhance that. And we also want to launch an external electronic content sharing and management system. So this is related to records management. The next goal is to strengthen our citywide community engagement and communications capacity. And we would do that through increasing internal collaboration and skill building, a new community engagement plan that is co-created with community stakeholders, maintenance of the Burien Community Connectors program, collaboration with local community organizations, and launch of a virtual City 101 program, sort of like a civics type program. And then the third would be maintaining, expanding, and adapting our digital engagement infrastructure to meet community need and expectation. So this includes a new website and an updated digital communications and engagement strategy, and some online dashboards that could share important data and information, such as a capital project map dashboard that was mentioned earlier today. The last but not least strategic direction is reshaping community through smart, mindful development. And we have several goals under this. We want to achieve major planning and policymaking efforts. So this will include both current short and long range efforts, such as the major update to the comprehensive plan that we're working on right now, our economic development action plan, and other plans. New zoning and design standards that to be considered for approval, including the Ambom and Boulevard Park zoning code amendments, expansion of MFTE or affordable housing zoning, zoning code updates to subdivision, critical area zoning, et cetera. Increasing the number and type of affordable housing units available in Burien. So this could be achieved through participation in partnerships like SKIP, city programs like the Affordable Housing Demonstration Program, and aligning city policy and planning documents for affordable housing tax credits, and then also advocacy with state and federal delegations for policies that support affordable housing and attracting developments that benefit the local community. The next goal that we identified here is attracting new businesses and development. And we would do that by enhancing our permitting customer service experience, implementing an investor attraction campaign, developer and property owner outreach and opportunity sessions for economic development in key neighborhoods, targeted economic development analysis of downtown growth as part of the comprehensive plan, and redesign of Burien's Gateway at First Avenue and 148th. I will just note that not all of these are currently funded, but they are strategies that were suggested. And then the final goal is optimize opportunity sites in Burien by supporting major developments such as the King County Downtown Transit-Oriented Development Site, Connected Burien Development, Mary's Place Affordable Family Housing, DESC Permanent Supportive Housing, the Port of Seattle site, et cetera. Also looking at city-owned downtown properties. So this concludes our presentation. And at this point, I think we are just seeking feedback on these goals and strategies or any other comments.
Deputy Mayor.
I move to place this item on the consent agenda of the next regular meeting.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I have questions. Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Sarah.
Yeah, I have discussions, not necessarily questions. One comment that I remember from back when we were doing it, and that I just want to kind of state on the record, is that the centering community accountability is our accountability to the community. And that came up, people asked at the time, and I had a couple of questions recently while looking at it, that it's not, we're telling the community they're accountable to us. It's in the other direction. I think that was the main comment I wanted to say. I like that these are aspirational. I like that some of them have check marks and ready to go, and others are things that we'll be working on as we get there. I did have one question about outreach. There's a lot of digital outreach that we're talking about. Is there a place for flyers and mailers and those kind of old fashioned things?
Well, I'll take this, Adolfo. So I think, like we were saying earlier in the presentation, this doesn't replace existing work. This is sort of in addition to or to enhance. I think even as our digital footprint should continue to evolve and meet current technology needs, there are still folks who prefer to see things on paper, or there are still people who the only thing they're going to open is something in the mail. So I think we will continue to present a budget that includes communications that are in print. That's, yeah.
I just hear from people who see things in windows or in the coffee shop. So, I mean, that's totally anecdotal, but.
Well, and so we do try to work with our partners like Discover Burien and others around event marketing, things like that. It's a lot of that is limited by labor, just going out and doing that legwork. Yeah. And then also, ensuring that those local businesses would agree to having signs put in their windows.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thanks. More comments and not necessarily questions. Just want to say thank you very much to Emily and our robust team, marketing team and outreach team, even though there's only like 2 of you, but I know that every department has hands in everything that we do, from parks to public works. And hopefully as we move forward through budgeting, we can look to support the work that you're doing, especially with hopefully slowly but surely improving our website, which I know is one of the biggest tools that we would use for a lot of the outreach. It's not lost on us as we look to budget. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know that's not me. But thank you. Great job. Fantastic job. Thank you and Devin and everybody.
And I just don't want to take credit for this. Was a big team effort. So I'm just here as a spokesperson. But thank you.
I'm wondering if, so some of there's the 4 categories. There's the financial stability, racial equity, centering community accountability, and reshaping. And I don't recall, was there a ranking of these big areas, or were they all equally important over the next 5 years?
Do you want to speak to that? City
Sure.
Manager?
Mayor, there was no actual ranking about the 4 particular categories. The intent was to have these 4 major buckets that everything that we do as staff or the city as a whole is compared to equally through all the different levels. So the higher the priority for a project meant that they touched on every one of the components and even potentially subcomponents, each one of the strategic plans. But there was no one particular hierarchy between advancing racial equity or reshaping community through smart mindful development. They were all equally important. It's just a guide for how we then roll out work or budget for programs or fill positions.
Mhm. Well, I just worry that if we don't have financial stability, it undermines all of these other areas. And, we've been briefed to good extent about the cliff we're approaching. So that's the only thing that worries me a little bit. And then with the accomplishments, which are their strategies, we just hope they'll all be accomplishments. Are those ranked at all as well? Because the lists are long, which is good. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of activity, but I'm just curious if that was a part of the conversation.
We did not go
Mhm.
through a ranking exercise now.
Yeah, no, not quite yet. We will, as we move forward, take everything that we know just through the collective experience from the team to determine what is necessary to move forward first. There are certainly going to be some priorities as we roll things out. And you make a very valid point that if we cannot afford to keep something operational, then that really would be one of the top priorities, to seek funding to fund all of our programs. So yes, there are ways for us internally to start making priorities, but those decisions will certainly be guided by all of the strategic directions, but then also through our needs internally to make sure that we have certain programs that are used the most, staffed and funded.
Okay. Councilmember Garcia, did you have another comment?
No, I did not. Sorry, forgot to lower it.
And a couple of other things, the MFTE, multifamily tax exemption, is that councilmatic?
I'd have to check it. Maybe, I don't want to give you an answer that is incorrect, so I'd have to review.
And the centering community accountability, just building on what Councilmember Sarah said, is that I feel like we need support for instances where we need rapid communications about things. I don't want to say that we want to have equal focus on emergency-like issues, but we've just had a lot of those. And I just want to make sure that we have that type of support available to communication staff. So that I think that is part of accountability, is that we have rapid response type communications out when there's something of really wide community concern.
We are certainly working on that, Mayor, and we do have a plan to increase our crisis management to certainly just provide additional information. But again, we do have, one of my comments to make as we close is to acknowledge the understaffing that we have just in every department. But yes, there is ongoing conversation about the inability to do some work because we don't have sufficient number of personnel.
Any other questions? I have one more. I'm just curious where, I remember when we did this exercise, there was discussion on homelessness and public safety. Where does that all fit in here?
It's really spread throughout the document, Mayor. A big component of the financial accountability component is the conversation that council raised about public safety. Working towards a ballot initiative, working towards providing potential services. We are working toward completing an RFP that will allow us to find support from a consultant that will help us to better define what public safety is. We do know what we've been told through a lot of the outreach performed by the comms team and other outreach efforts in Shape Your City and those. But we also want to make sure that everyone's voice, including councils, is taken into consideration when we review the information that we have collected. So issues related to the unhoused, especially issues related to public safety, are not necessarily specifically pointed to here, but the idea is to keep the concepts general so that we could incorporate as much as possible within these 4 particular strategic directions.
And I have one more, just because we talked about the ballot initiative. The last time we had a conversation, it was really about process. Is the council going to see something about what's actually contained in terms of specific activities by the end of the year?
Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, our last briefing was, we're going to get a consultant and here's what the process is like, but we didn't really delve into what are the areas we're hoping to fund or even start that discussion. And I'm wondering if that would be accomplished by the end of the year, or is that going to take longer?
Certainly by the end of the year, my plan is to bring to council a draft RFP. We can certainly present it to council so we can discuss, at the very least, the general framework of what it would look like. We asked council now to provide input on what it would like to highlight or what it would like to maybe bring further down into the category list. But yes, before the end of the year, the idea is to bring to council a draft of the request for proposal or request for information, or one of those three types of documents that we have the option to send out.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion and seconded to place this item on the consent agenda of the next regular meeting. So all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
So there are one, so that's Council.
Jimmy Mott, aye.
Okay. Any nays? And I'll be the one abstention, just because I have a ton of questions. So it's 6 yays and 1 abstention.
Mayor, if I may,
Yep.
before we move on, I just want to acknowledge, I know that I mentioned that staff and council participated in this process, but I would like to highlight that leadership team and managers all came together, formed different groups under these particular strategic points. And anyone that has performed group work, many members of council do perform group work, know how difficult it is to pull all that information together. But I also want to highlight that we also dealt with the challenge that came with being severely understaffed in some departments. And so now it was a lot of different folks, different ideas of how to move forward, but then also not really having the time to do it, but still making the time to do it. So the team did an excellent work in getting to a particular location. And then we had comms that also was involved in the initial process, but then we had comms with 2 folks in that department that had to make sense of all of it. And it's difficult to be a part of a group that makes a recommendation for particular strategic direction, but then it also is a special task to have 2 folks that really make sense of all of it, to craft it into what it looks now, and then put it before you for review. So I just want to acknowledge that it seems like it's only 2.5, 3 pages worth of work, but it was a lot of work to get here. So you have an excellent team and your leaders and department directors and managers, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you.